I still remember the night everything in my life changed. The night when the snow fell heavier than I had ever seen before, covering the world in a quiet, cold blanket. The forest path was narrow under my feet, and my mother's hand felt strange in mine. Tight one moment, trembling the next, and then suddenly distant, like she wasn't really holding me at all. I kept asking her where we were going, why it was so dark, why she wouldn't talk to me. But she never answered. She just kept walking, faster and faster, as if she was running from something I couldn't see. The snowflakes fell onto my eyelashes, melting into tiny drops that blurred my sight. I tugged her coat gently, hoping she would look at me, smile at me, reassure me the way she used to. But she didn't. Her silence felt heavier than the storm around us. And then, she stopped. She turned, knelt in front of me, and placed a small backpack in my hands. It was so light that my heart sank immediately. Something about this moment felt wrong. Terribly wrong. Before I could ask anything, she whispered words that would carve themselves into my soul forever. "I'm sorry. I can't take you with me anymore." I stared at her, frozen not from the cold, but from confusion and fear. I thought she was joking. I thought maybe we were playing a game. But she didn't smile. She didn't explain. She just stood, stepped back, and turned away. I ran after her, grabbing her coat, begging, crying, promising I would be good, promising I would listen. But she gently removed my hands from her coat and walked into the storm. My voice was swallowed by the wind. My tears froze before they hit the ground. In seconds, her figure disappeared into the swirling snow, and the forest fell silent. I waited for her to come back. Minutes passed, then more, and the silence grew. She wasn't coming back, and I was alone. I sank to the ground, shaking, hugging myself as the cold wrapped around me like a cruel blanket. When I opened the backpack she left, I found almost nothing. A scarf, a small, hard piece of bread, and a folded note. The words were simple, but sharp enough to break a child. "Forgive me. You're safer without me." I didn't feel safer. I felt abandoned, unwanted, forgotten. I cried until my voice turned hoarse, but the forest did not remain silent for long. A soft howl echoed in the distance, then another, and another. Wolves emerged from between the trees, their eyes glowing softly in the dark. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt seen. The silver wolf approached me slowly, her breath warm against my frozen skin. She nudged me gently with her nose as if urging me to stand. And so, with weak legs and a breaking heart, I rose. The wolves walked deeper into the forest, stopping every few steps to look back. They were asking me to follow. And I did. They led me to a sheltered clearing where the wind didn't bite as harshly, where the snow was softer. The silver wolf lay beside a fallen log and nudged me again, offering warmth. I curled beside her, the heat of her fur sinking into my bones. That night, the wolves became the first creatures in the world who didn't walk away from me. And somewhere deep in my broken heart, something small and fragile began to survive. Morning arrived slowly. The wolves rose before me, stretching, sniffing the air. Hunger clawed at my stomach. I hadn't eaten since the day before. The younger brown wolf approached with something in his mouth, a small rabbit. and placed it gently at my feet. I stared at him, unsure, but the silver wolf tore a piece from me and pushed it closer. It was my first lesson in survival. Sometimes fear comes later. Hunger demands now. Days passed, maybe weeks. The snow jungle became a world without time. I learned to walk where the wolves walked, to step lightly, to listen for danger in the trees. I learned which berries to eat and which roots to avoid. I learned to dig through snow for water. I learned silence, not the kind my mother left me in, but the kind that protects you, sharpens you. One evening, the silver wolf led me to a half-collapsed cabin buried under snow. Inside, I found a wooden bird carved long ago. Small, delicate, familiar. And then memory hit me like a falling tree. My mother had carved that bird when I was little. She told me it meant freedom. She told me I would fly one day. Why was it here? Why did she leave me near this place? Confusion settled deep inside me, mixing with a new kind of pain. A pain that whispered, "There is more you do not know." Seasons began to change. Spring brought muddy earth and melting snow. I watched the world wake up, watch animals return, watch rivers break free from ice. And slowly, carefully, I grew. My hands toughened, my steps steadied, my fear softened. The wolves taught me how to read the forest, how to track animals, how to hide, how to endure storms with patience instead of panic. The silver wolf became my guide, my guardian, my silent family. Some nights when I couldn't sleep, I would whisper to her everything I couldn't say to anyone else. Do you think she still loves me? Do you think she regrets leaving me? Do you think I'll ever understand why? She never answered, but she always listened. And sometimes listening is a deeper comfort than words. Years passed. Winters felt less deadly. Springs felt more hopeful. I learned to build small shelters, to weave branches into walls, to create crude tools. I watched the silver wolf give birth to 3 tiny pups, and I protected them like siblings. For the first time, I felt needed, loved, wanted. And then, the footprints returned. Human footprints. Fresh. Deep. Someone was in the forest. Someone who didn't belong to the wolves' world. The wolves growled. My heart pounded. I followed the prints, my instincts sharp. And that's when I saw him. A man in a heavy coat, face hidden, searching the ground. He wasn't lost. He was looking for something. Or someone. He found the torn piece of my mother's coat stuck to a branch. He held it like it meant something to him. Then he said something that froze my blood. "Isla, if you're here, please come out." My name. My real name. Spoken by a stranger. I stepped forward. He pulled off his scarf, revealing tired eyes and a face weathered by years. "You're alive. Thank God," he whispered. I asked who he was. "My name is Elias," he said softly. "Your mother's uncle." My uncle. The truth hit me before his words did. The way he looked at me, not with shock, not with fear, but with heartbreak, told me everything. He wasn't here to hurt me. He was here to find me. And when he finally spoke the words I never imagined, the world around me shifted forever. Your mother didn't abandon you because she wanted to. She abandoned you because someone was trying to take you from her. She left you in the forest to save your life. My breath cracked, my knees trembled. Everything I believed shattered and rebuilt itself in one moment. My mother hadn't left because she didn't love me. She left because she loved me too much, and she died searching for me. I stared at Elias, my uncle, as the truth settled into me like ice melting into fire. My mother hadn't walked away because she wanted to be free of me. She walked away because she believed that leaving me in the snow was the only way to keep me alive. The pain in my chest twisted into something unfamiliar, something sharp but hopeful, something that hurt and healed at the same time. Elias approached slowly, as if afraid I would disappear like a shadow. He whispered, "She looked." Elias waited patiently until my breathing steadied. "Your mother was running from people," he continued. "People who wanted her inheritance, people who wanted you. She didn't trust anyone, not even me, when she fled into the forest. But she thought you would be safe if she left you deep inside the snow." His voice cracked. She was wrong, but she didn't know any other way. A quiet anger rose inside me, not the wild anger I once felt toward her, but a new one, sharper and more focused. Anger at the people who forced her to abandon her child. Anger at the greed that shattered her life. Anger at the lies that stole years from both of us. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice steady even though my heart wasn't. "The people who wanted us gone." Elias sighed and looked into the distance, as if seeing ghosts. Her cousins, her own family. They wanted everything she owned, and when she refused, they made threats, real threats. "She ran to protect you." He lowered his head. "And when she disappeared, they forged reports saying you both died in a storm. They took everything." I clenched my fist. Snowflakes melted in my palms. "So they still think I'm dead," I whispered. "Yes," Elias said quietly. "And if they find out you're alive, they will try to take everything again, including you." The silver wolf growled softly, sensing the tension. I placed a hand on her fur and whispered, "It's okay." But inside, I wasn't calm. Inside, a decision had already begun to form. "I want to face them," I said, surprising even myself. Elias blinked. "Ayla, it could be dangerous." I survived danger all my life. I survived the forest. I survived storms. I survived being abandoned. But I will not survive silence. I need to know the whole truth. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If you want answers, I'll help you get them." We walked together toward the edge of the forest. The wolves followed quietly until we reached a wide clearing where the snowy jungle ended and the human world began. The silver wolf stepped in front of me. Her eyes glowed with a message I didn't need words to understand. She knew this was goodbye. I knelt in front of her, my heart heavy. "I'm not leaving forever," I whispered, pressing my forehead against hers, "but I can't stay hidden anymore." She closed her eyes, breathing softly against my cheek. A silent blessing, a silent promise. And then she stepped back, letting me go. The human world was louder, brighter, heavier than I remembered. The town was full of voices, smells, movements that felt overwhelming. People stared at me, at my clothes, my hair, the wildness in my eyes. I felt like an animal thrown into a cage of noise. But I didn't break. I didn't flinch. I walked beside Elias as if I belonged there, even though I didn't. When we reached his cabin, the warmth of the fireplace felt unnatural, almost wrong compared to the cold comfort of the forest. He handed me the first real bowl of soup I had tasted in years. I held it awkwardly, unsure how to drink from it, unsure how to sit in a chair that didn't feel like the ground. Everything felt strange, unfamiliar,
heavy. But Elias didn't judge. He watched me gently, giving me space, letting me breathe. Over the next days, he taught me the human world again. I learned how to use silverware, how to open doors without force, how to sleep in a bed without curling up like a wolf pup. Every lesson felt like learning to walk again, and every moment reminded me that I had lived a life unlike anyone else. One night, Elias placed a small wooden box in front of me. "There's something you should see." Inside, I found a photograph. My mother holding me as a baby, smiling as if the world had never hurt her. My heart broke open all over again. Elias whispered, "She never forgot you. She never stopped loving you." Tears fell silently down my face. I pressed the photo to my chest, shaking with emotions too heavy to hold. The forest taught me strength, but this moment taught me something else. Humans have storms inside them too. After days of preparation, Elias finally said, "It's time." He handed me a coat and boots. "When we go to the estate, everything will change." I nodded, my resolution already carved in stone. "I'm ready." The city was nothing like I remembered. Tall buildings, rushing cars, people moving in waves. But none of it scared me. I had faced wolves. I had faced starvation. I had faced abandonment. But I will not survive silence. I need to know the whole truth. When we reached the estate gates, tall, black, and imposing, I felt a cold calm settle inside me. Elias looked at me one last time. "Are you sure?" I took a breath and touched the wooden bird around my neck, my last piece of her. I didn't survive the snow to remain silent. We stepped inside. The hall was filled with them, my mother's relatives, the ones who stole her life. Their eyes widened when they saw me, as if the past had returned to confront them. I spoke my name clearly. "I am Isla, Elise's daughter." Fear flickered in their eyes. They thought I died with her. They thought they won. Not anymore. The confrontation was sharp, cutting, filled with truths they tried to bury. They denied, they shouted, they blamed each other. But their lies broke beneath the weight of the evidence Elias carried. The letters, the threats, the forged reports. And when I spoke of my mother's last year searching for me, staring into their eyes with the cold strength the forest gave me, their arrogance fell apart. When Elias handed me the final paper, my mother's last wish, naming me as the rightful heir, silence filled the room. They couldn't deny it. They couldn't fight it. Everything they stole was now mine. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't seek revenge through cruelty. I simply stood tall and said, "I survived everything, and I will not be broken again." When I walked out of the estate, I felt something I had never felt before. Peace. Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because I finally understood my mother and I finally understood myself. I returned to the forest one last time. The wolves were waiting. The silver wolf greeted me with a soft, deep howl. I knelt in the snow where my mother left me years ago and whispered, "I forgive you, Mama. I know you tried to save me. Now I'll live the life you wanted for me." And for the first time, my tears didn't hurt. They healed. When I left the forest again, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The forest was in me, its strength, its silence, its lessons. I carried it into the world like armor. I survived the snow. I survived the truth. I survived the people who tried to take everything. And now I was finally rising. Not as a broken child, not as a lost orphan, but as Ayla, the girl who walked out of a storm and refused to disappear. The walk back from the forest felt different this time. The cold no longer bit into my skin like before. Instead, it felt like an old friend brushing past me, reminding me where I came from. reminding me what I had survived. Each step forward was a strange blend of leaving and becoming, of letting go and rising. Elias walked beside me in quiet understanding. He didn't rush me, didn't speak, didn't try to guide me. He simply stayed close enough to remind me that I wasn't alone anymore. When we reached his cabin again, the world felt warmer, softer, heavier with human emotion. I sat by the fire, holding the wooden bird in my hands, tracing its carved wings with my thumb. For years, it had been the only trace of my mother, the only proof she existed beyond memory. Now, it also held the truth of everything she fought for, everything she feared, everything she sacrificed. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply, letting the warmth melt the last remnants of the girl who once waited in the snow for someone to return. The next morning felt like the first day of a new life. Elias placed a warm cup of tea in front of me and said gently, "You don't have to decide everything today." But he didn't understand. I had been waiting years, years in silence, years in the cold, years without answers. Now that the truth had found me, I couldn't sit still. "I want to go back to the estate," I said. "One last time." He looked worried, but he nodded. He knew better than to argue with a girl who survived storms. This time, when we reached the tall iron gates, I didn't feel fear or anger. I felt steady, ready. The guards lowered their heads as we walked through, their earlier hesitation replaced by guilt or shame. I couldn't tell which, and I didn't care. Inside the estate, everything looked too polished, too artificial, as if the walls themselves were trying to hide the ugliness of the people who once ruled them. I walked through the hallway slowly, touching the wooden frames, the marble pillars, the soft rugs. My mother had grown up here. She had walked these hallways, laughed in these rooms, fought her battles behind these doors. And later, she had run from this same place, carrying me in her arms, choosing the unknown cold over familiar cruelty. I imagined her fear, her desperation, her determination. Every step felt like walking inside her memories. In one room, I found portraits of the family, paintings of people who looked powerful and perfect on the outside, but I now knew the truth behind their eyes. My mother's portrait was missing. They had erased her, removed her face, removed her existence. As if taking her inheritance wasn't enough, they needed to take her memory too. I stood there, staring at the empty space where her portrait should have been, and whispered, "They couldn't erase me." My reflection in the glass stared back, different, wilder, stronger. I wasn't the child they thought died. I wasn't the ghost they feared. I was the storm that survived. And storms never disappear quietly. When we entered the main hall again, the family was waiting, not seated this time, but standing, restless, shaken. Their eyes darted from me to Elias, unsure what would happen next. I didn't want revenge through shouting or chaos. I wanted the truth spoken out loud, not just carried inside me. So I told them everything. I told them what the forest taught me. I told them how my mother died searching for me. I told them how I lived when they hoped I had vanished. I told them how their lies couldn't bury me like snow. Some of them lowered their heads in shame. Others looked away, unable to face the consequences of their actions. A few still clung to denial, but their voices were weak and trembling. They didn't see a lost child anymore. They saw someone who walked out of the wilderness with the truth as their shield. Elias stepped forward and handed them the legal documents confirming everything. My mother's last will, her reports, her letters. Their world collapsed, quietly. No screaming, no fighting, just heavy, suffocating truth settling in every corner of the room. You didn't just steal from her, I said softly. You stole from me. You stole years I can never get back. A few tears fell, but I didn't wipe them. Pain was part of me. Survival was part of me. Truth was part of me. The silver-haired man finally spoke, his voice barely audible. What do you want from us? I looked at him steadily. Nothing, I said. I don't need anything from people who broke my mother. They all tensed, expecting anger, expecting demands, expecting war. But I continued calmly. I only came to take back what was always mine. They didn't fight. They didn't dare. By the time I walked out of the estate for the last time, I didn't feel anger or satisfaction. I felt something deeper. Freedom. Not the kind you run toward, but the kind that settles inside your bones and tells you that you have finally finished the hardest chapter of your life. Elias placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Your mother would be proud." I looked at him, eyes softening for the first time in a long time. I whispered, "She already is." I felt her in the wind, in the snow, in the forest behind me, in the strength inside me. We walked away from that place, leaving behind walls built on greed and lies. Each step felt lighter, as if I was shedding the last pieces of a life that never belonged to me. When the trees came into view again, I felt a familiar pull. The forest wasn't my prison. It was my home, my shield, my teacher. I entered the woods alone this time, walking until the smell of pine wrapped around me like a warm embrace. The wolves appeared from between the trees, meeting me with gentle howls. The silver wolf approached me, her eyes shining with something that felt like pride. I knelt and touched her fur, whispering, "I'm okay now. I did it." She nuzzled my hand softly, and I knew she understood. Wolves always understand what humans cannot. I returned to the clearing where the snow had once swallowed the tears of a forgotten child. I stood there in silence, letting the memories drift through me like whispers carried by the wind. I murmured, "I survived, and I forgive you, Mama." When I stepped out of the forest for the final time, the world looked bigger, brighter, and less frightening. I wasn't the girl abandoned in the snow anymore. I wasn't the frightened child waiting for someone to return. I wasn't the lost soul hiding behind trees and shadows. I was Ayla, a girl shaped by storms, a girl raised by wolves, a girl who carved her own destiny out of cold and pain. And as the sun touched my face, warm and gentle, I finally felt what I had chased all my life without knowing its name. Peace. The world that waited beyond the forest felt strange at first. Streets stretched wider than the rivers I once crossed. Houses stood taller than the cliffs I used to climb. Human voices drifted in the air. Busy, warm, careless, sharp. Life moved fast here. Faster than the rhythm of the snow, faster than the quiet language of the wolves. But this time, I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't hiding from anything. I wasn't running from ghosts or shadows. I walked into this new world carrying every lesson the forest had carved into me. Elias helped me settle into a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't large or fancy like the estate. It wasn't filled with expensive paintings or polished floors. But it felt real, warm, safe. I spent the first night sitting by the window watching the snow fall softly outside. It grounded me. It reminded me that strength wasn't something you learned. It was something you survived, and I had survived more than I ever understood. Some days I would find it became easier to speak to people, easier to laugh, easier to breathe. I wasn't pretending to be human. I was simply learning how to be one again. And the wildness inside me remained, not as something to hide, but as something that made me stronger. One late afternoon, while walking along the riverbank, a sudden gust of wind hit me, a familiar chill, a familiar whisper. I turned toward the forest. The silver wolf was standing at the tree line, watching me. She held my gaze for a long moment, her breath visible in the cold air. I stepped closer, but she didn't move. She didn't need to. The message was clear. I had grown. I had risen. I was no longer the child who needed saving. I placed my hand over my heart and bowed my head slightly. She blinked slowly, then turned and vanished into the trees. It was the last time I saw her, and somehow that moment felt perfect, pure, final, full of understanding. She had guided me through the parts of my life where I needed strength. Now she was telling me I could guide myself. As time went on, my world settled into balance. The forest behind me, the town ahead of me, and the truth beneath my feet. I began helping people in small ways, mending fences, calming frightened animals, gathering herbs during storms. People started calling me the girl from the snow, but not out of fear, out of respect, out of curiosity, out of gratitude. Every night before sleep, I would touch the wooden bird and the crystal tear resting together on my chest. One representing the childhood I lost, the other representing the love I rediscovered. Together, they told my story, a story that began in abandonment but didn't end in bitterness, a story that passed through wilderness but didn't drown in it, a story about surviving the cold and finding warmth again. I carried the lessons the wolves taught me in everything I did. Be silent when needed. Be fierce when necessary. Be patient when the world shakes. Be loyal to those who stand beside you. And never run from the truth. Walk straight into it. I didn't know what the rest of my life would look like. I didn't know if I would stay in the town forever or travel beyond the mountains, or someday return to the forest for good. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was no longer defined by the night my mother left me. I was defined by the girl who stood up again. Defined by the child who survived storms. Defined by the young woman who reclaimed her truth. Sometimes I would stand in the town square, watching the world move around me. Children running, mothers laughing, men carrying heavy loads, women chatting by the fountain. Life was happening everywhere, and for the first time, I wasn't standing outside of it. I was part of it. And every now and then, when the snow began to fall softly, I would close my eyes and breathe in deeply. I could almost hear the distant howl of wolves echoing through the trees like a reminder of where I came from. They were the guardians of my past. Now I was the guardian of my future. My story didn't end in the snow. It began there. A girl abandoned in a storm. A girl raised by wolves. A girl who walked out of the cold stronger than the people who tried to silence her.
A girl who rose from the snow and never looked back in fear. Only forward. Always forward.